So after episode's 2 bad decision with Black Dragon versus Kraken, and after episode three's bad questionable judge's decision with Beta and Rotator, you'd figure that there would be not a lot of controversial decisions left in the season, or maybe just not some coming right now, because like most of the bad decisions are kind of like spread out across the season. But no, we have another very questionable decision this time. But this time I actually disagree with the decision, like, a lot. Now, I don't mean any offense to the Malice team. I don't mean any offense to Bunny. She but I do not see a possible way that Malice won that fight. Shatter it's not like Beta versus Rotator where you could make an argument about Rotator winning, or Black Dragon versus Kraken, where you could make an argument about like Black Dragon winning, or stuff like that, where you can argue whether you understand how the winner won that controversial decision, how Beto beat Rotator, and how Black Dragon beat Kraken. I don't see any argument for Malice here in this fight. I think Shatter. So basically, let me tell you what happened. This is a spoiler warning. There will be spoilers for the Malice versus Shatter fight in episode 4 of 2020 BattleBots. So I should probably put that in the title. But this will contain spoilers, so be warned. So basically, at the beginning of the fight, there was this one hit that where Malice's weapon and Shatter's hammer collided. Now, Shatter's weapon broke on impact on Malice's disc, and because of that, from what I know, Shatter's weapon broke into like a bunch of tiny pieces, and like kind of because of the force that Shatter had, and because of all the pieces spread about, it kind of was able to cut into Malice's weapon belt. This basically meant there was a pushing and shoving battle, but not really in the sense. Basically, Malice was the only one who really lost a weapon in that fight. Shatter still technically had its weapon. He didn't have the hammer head, but he still had the weapon. He could still fire the hammer. On the contrary to Malice, though, Malice didn't have any weapon left. Malice was basically done. It couldn't use a weapon anymore. So it basically became Malice trying to push Shatter into walls and stuff. And this was kind of a problem because of Malice's design. Now, to my disbelief, Malice was actually very aggressive in the fight. I'll give it that. And it definitely looked like it had better drive power than Shatter. But for the most part, Shatter kept firing its hammer on Malice. Now, the question is, here's the question of this. Does this mean that Shatter earned damage points for doing this because it was actively hitting Malice on with the weapon instead of what Beta did to Rotator? Or does that not count because Shatter doesn't have the hammerhead? Now, I don't know that much about BattleBots rules, but the way I see it, I believe this should still count as damage. Now, I'm not sure how the judges' scorecards is. I'm going to have to check the BattleBots Facebook group to check out what exactly the judges' scorecard was, because they showed the scorecard for Beta versus Rotator like a day after the episode came out. So maybe they'll show the judging system of how they scored it. But I'm going to basically say how I would have scored it if I was a judge. So first off, damage. I do not think that the first collision, I do think that hit favored Malice slightly, but not by much. After that, it was just Shatter using its hammer on Malice repeatedly. Now, if Shatter lost its entire weapon, the weapon power, that would have been a much different story. But the problem is that both Malice and Shatter, only Malice lost its weapon. Shatter did not. It still could fire the hammer, it just didn't have the hammer-like spike that goes on top of the hammer. So I was thinking about scoring it 3 to 2 for damage to Shatter, but after looking more into it, I don't think that Malice really did any damage after that hit because Malice didn't have a weapon. So I think I'm going to go 4-1 damage to Shatter. Next up is Control, which was probably the toughest one for me to decide on because of how strange the shoving battle was. The shoving battle, at least for Malice's end, was actually very surprisingly well. Malice was really well driven during the fight. It did have a lot more drive power than Shatter, and that's how it was able to like push Shatter around, because two-wheel robots usually have much more driving power than like four-wheel drive robots. But there wasn't any noticeable control that Malice did in the fight. Like, it might have pushed Shatter around a few times, but it didn't push him into like walls or screws or the kill saws or the pulverizers. Malice had no real like control, like how Beta controlled Rotator. Beta controlled Rotator, scooped him up with a wedge and took him wherever he wanted. Malice didn't really have control. It was just pushing Shatter, but the pushing had to end when Shatter kept using its hammer on Malice, because of how powerful Shatter's hammer is, and it was able to impact it was able to basically bounce Shatter around a little bit, so it didn't get pushed around too much. So, after looking into it, I am actually going to give Control 2-1 for Malice right now. Finally, we have Aggression, which was another tough one to decide on, because Aggression is a very complicated rule in BattleBots that has been very mixed each judge's decision. But this is how I view it. Malice lost its weapon. It had no active weapon after the fight. Based on BattleBots rules, which I find very flawed, if you do not... Well, that's a confusing part for the judge's decision too, because Malice did have an active weapon in the fight. It just didn't have it all the time. Shatter still did have the active weapon at the time. It had the active weapon for the entire time. So the question is, does Shatter get aggression points for having an active weapon longer than Malice? Now, I am not a BattleBots judge. I do not want to take the job as a BattleBots judge. I feel like it would be horrid and annoying. And I think Lisa, Derek, and Jason do not get enough credit as judges, as they are very experienced in the field of robotic combat. But based on the rules of BattleBots, the rules that have been set up for BattleBots for at least the 2015 season, all the way to the 2020 season, I do not see how Malice had more aggression than Shatter. Now, I did say Malice had good aggression, and that's what I gave credit for Malice. But I do not think that Malice had more aggression to Shatter based on the rules of BattleBots. Like, this is the own rules you set up. Now I am starting to understand what Will Bales was saying with the inconsistency of the judges' decisions and the aggression category, because it just contradicts the rule set all the time. I am going to give the aggression scale 2-1 to Shatter, which means the final score would be 7-4 in favor of Shatter. I do not understand how crazy this judge's decision could have been. I don't see any way that they should have given Malice the win. Malice did have more control, but it was very flawed control, because Malice didn't really take Shatter anywhere. Like, I'm sure if Malice, like, put Shatter in the screws, like, once, then maybe I would have given 3-0 to control to Malice, and then there would be an argument there, but Malice didn't. It was just because based on the drive power difference between Malice and Shatter. So this has just gotten crazy, and from what I know, based on posts made by John Mladnick from Gigabyte and that the team captain of Kraken, whatever his name was, Matt Spurk, I think. They're saying that there's more controversial judges' decisions on the way. So I feel like I'm watching like off the wall anime. I feel like I'm watching an episode of Sword Art Online right now because of how off the wall decisions have been getting. It has gotten so crazy that I'm actually getting a headache from this. Anyway, that's about it. See ya.